What could be lurking just below your feet? Today I'll show you some of the strangest things people have found underground, from real-life hobbits and mole people to creepy mythical statues. So strap in, because this is going to be one crazy ride. The creepy sewer monster. Residents of a town in North Carolina were terrified when news headlines warned of a monster living beneath the streets. Have you ever seen that movie from the late 1950s called The Blob? The film was about this disgusting, indestructible creature that looked like, well, a blob. It kind of had a jelly-like texture to it, and it crawled out of a meteorite. The blob consumed everything in its path simply by absorbing things. The movie was quite strange, to say the least. It was likely born from the mind of someone with a twisted imagination. But what if it wasn't? What if it was based off of something real? Well, people from North Carolina thought they might have found the inspiration behind this bizarre horror film in 2009. So did people see something creep out of a meteorite or what? Nope. They saw something in the sewer. In April of 2009, a video started to circulate online of a mysterious creature clinging to the walls of a privately maintained sewer line in the city of Raleigh. The clip was taken by an inspection worker who got the scare of a lifetime while surveying the condition of the drainage system. The worker saw what appeared to be a pulsating, slimy mass. It was red in color and seemed to be reaching to the light emanating from the man's flashlight. The creature also had tendrils that resembled veins or roots, allowing it to hang from the walls, which also appeared to move and contract. This thing was gross, nothing short of pure nightmare fuel. People were calling it a monster. But what in the world was it? An alien? Some grotesque mutant egg sac? As cool as that would be, the real answer will surprise you. When the video appeared online, people were quick to chime in with what they thought it was. Some said that it was a new, undocumented life form. Others said it wasn't even real, that it was just some marketing scheme to promote a new sci-fi flick. But they were all wrong. The slimy blob was a real, living creature. Actually, it wasn't just one creature, it was hundreds of them. Ed Buchan, who works as an environmental coordinator for Raleigh's Public Utilities Department, identified the pulsating mass as a colony of worms. Tuberflex worms, which are also known as sludge worms, form colonies or clusters that range in size from about a ½ to 1 inch in diameter. They don't normally live in the sewer though. Typically, these worms are found in the sediment of ponds, where people scoop them out to sell them as fish food. It's unclear how these worms ended up in the sewer, but thankfully they posed no real threat to the people of Raleigh. They weren't dangerous, they just looked like they were. York Properties, which manages the sewer system, did not comment on the creepy crawlies, so nobody knows whether these things were ever removed or not. I hope they were, even if they are harmless. Hobbit Cave. Did hobbits roam the earth in the past? A recent discovery from a cave in Indonesia may shed light on the mystery. Listen to this and let me know your thoughts in the comments. A team of archaeologists were excavating Liang Bua Cave when they stumbled upon what they thought were human bones. The skull was a little smaller than usual, but it could have belonged to a young child. However, things got weirder as they kept digging. The team uncovered more bones, some that were still attached to each other, but they were extremely brittle and required extra care in order to lift them in one piece. Once the bones were safely removed, archaeologists got to work examining the specimens. The skull, about the size of a grapefruit, was analyzed first, and what researchers found particularly interesting was its teeth. They initially believed that the skull belonged to a child, but then discovered that it had the molar teeth of an adult. What they found was a completely new type of human. They must have been thrilled, and get this, when it was alive, it would have bared a striking resemblance to a hobbit. That's right, this evolutionary offshoot of human stood just over 3 feet tall, and before its death, it only weighed around 66 pounds. But this was a full-grown adult specimen. The Liang Bua team named the new species Homo floresiensis after Flores Island, where the cave is located. They played around with the idea of calling it Homo hobbitus, but they decided against it in the end. Bummer, I like that name better. So what does this discovery mean in the grand scheme of things? Well, for one, it proves that humans did not evolve in a neat line. It shows us that there's still so much we don't know about the human story. However, some experts don't accept this. They have come up with their own theories to explain this hobbit-sized human. They say that this was just an ordinary human with some type of growth disorder like microcephaly. This condition results in a person with an abnormally small body and head and leads to cognitive impairment. But the team who examined the skeleton squashed this theory and instead offered their own explanation. Some of the team thought that this could have been a dwarfed offshoot of Homo erectus. Since the specimen was found on a remote island, they proposed that, like other animal species, it shrunk in response to limited resources. But when were these hobbits running around Flores Island? Well, that's a highly debated subject. When carbon dating tests were first done in 2003, researchers determined the skeleton to be 18,000 years old. That was startling because that would mean hobbits lived closer in time to us than they did to the Neanderthals. But when testing was repeated in 2016, suddenly scientists were getting different results. The most recent estimates say that the hobbit is between 50,000 to 60,000 years old. Why researchers got such different dates isn't clear. How the hobbit came to evolve is still a mystery, one that experts are desperate to solve. Another question that may take years to answer is, why did this species disappear after surviving so long on the island? They lived there for almost 1 million years, then simply vanished. The most accepted theory is that a series of volcanic eruptions wiped the hobbits out. Apparently, a layer of volcanic ash was discovered on Flores Island, and above that layer, no hobbit fossils have been found. But researchers cannot confirm nor deny whether this is the sole reason for their extinction. And now for number 8, but first it's shout-out time. Big thank you to Ubaldo Myers for your generous super thanks. Subscribe to join the Origins Explained family. The Theatre in the Paris Catacombs. Descend with me into the depths of the Paris Catacombs beneath the glittering lights and bustling streets where secret societies thrive in the shadows. Imagine slipping through a manhole cover next to the Arc de Triomphe into a labyrinth hidden from the world above. But why would anyone venture into this subterranean realm? That's what the police were asking themselves in 2004. As a law enforcement team was patrolling the underground maze, they found what appeared to be a secret movie theater and bar carved from the catacombs' stone walls. Most people know the Paris Catacombs as the eerie resting place of countless skulls and bones, a chilling reminder of the city's past. But for a select few, the tunnels serve as a secret gathering place and a sanctuary for those who dare to explore its depths. The catacombs' history is as labyrinthine as its tunnels. Carved out centuries ago, they served as quarries for Notre Dame and other iconic landmarks. Street names above the ground mark the passages below, a cryptic guide for those who navigate the underground maze. Despite the allure, entering the catacombs became illegal in 1955, with French police patrolling their deep, shadowy corridors. It wasn't particularly unusual to find a person or two down in the tunnels, either filming content or simply exploring out of morbid curiosity. But what was completely out of the ordinary was finding the bar and theatre, which looked as though they had been used recently. The builders of this subterranean hangout spot even stole electricity from the apartment buildings above to power their electronic devices. But who were the architects of this place? Their unauthorized installation was immediately dismantled, but mysteriously, it wasn't the authorities who did so. The day after making the discovery, the police returned to the site to try and catch whoever was dwelling there. Surprisingly though, everything was gone. The movie theater, the bar, everything. It was as if they had never been there at all. The only thing officers found was a creepy note that read, "Don't try to find us," written in French, of course. This mystery only deepens when you hear the tales of secret societies in Paris dedicating themselves to the preservation and beautification of the tunnels. From massive fountains and full staircases carved from stone to statues of lions, the catacombs are not just a place to house skeletons. Allegedly, there are at least 6 societies of the Paris underground that could have been responsible for the theater and bar. I won't get into all of them, but I will tell you the name of the group that fessed up. The LMDP, or the La Mexicaine de Perforation, is made up of a group of people who are obsessed with the subterranean realm. They specialize in drilling holes, and they're responsible for staging movie festivals and art events underground. Most of its members remain secret for obvious reasons, but the group's leader, Lazar Kunzman, admitted to building the theater and bar that was discovered in 2004. Creepy mythical statues. In 2021, a man filming content for his YouTube channel, Fearless and Far, stumbled upon some creepy statues while venturing into a hidden, crystal-cladded cave in Ukraine. These statues are still a mystery to this day, leaving us with questions that may never be answered, like who made them and why. The brave adventurer Mike Corey filmed his descent into Optimistic Cave. He squeezed through narrow passages covered in crystals until he made the unexpected find. The bizarre sculptures included a grim reaper, a piranha, and a mythical minotaur, complete with horns, a giant nose ring, and bulging muscles. Some believe that the sculptures were made in 1966 by local missionaries who first discovered the cave. But that's just one theory. In reality, nobody knows the truth. If you think about it, it doesn't make much sense that missionaries would carve statues with such dark themes like the Grim Reaper, which Corey said looks like death. If there were any sculptures of biblical figures like Jesus, I might be more inclined to believe it. It may be that Corey brought in these statues in order to capture them for his channel, but given the sheer size of these things, it's not very likely. The Minotaur in particular towers over the explorer. Corey is not just a YouTuber, he's a filmmaker and a BBC television host. He travels the world and documents everything, hoping to help people conquer their fears. He decided to explore Optimistic Cave after hearing of its incredible crystals, some of which are believed to be millions of years old. He never expected to find statues created by a mysterious artist. To get to the statues, Corey embarked on a 5-hour journey through the cave's winding and disorienting passageways. The cave stretches a whopping 140 miles, making it the 5th largest on the planet. Sources suggest that since the cave's discovery, there have been over 50 expeditions into its depths. But Corey was the first to find the creepy statues of mythological creatures. Talk about a one-of-a-kind discovery. Who do you think left the statues in the cave? Let me know in the comments. The medieval castle. Let me tell you about the time researchers found the remains of a medieval castle buried beneath a hotel in France. It's hard to believe that below the modern streets of Brittany, there's a whole world from a bygone era. This ancient stronghold, known as Brittany's Château de l'Hermine, had once been the lavish residence of wealthy aristocrats. But as time marched on, the castle fell into obscurity, and eventually it was buried beneath layers of history. The story of the castle began in 1381 when John IV, the Duke of Brittany, commissioned the construction of the Château de l'Hermine. Legend has it that John IV was more than a mere noble. He was a visionary. He was a dreamer who saw beyond the stone and mortar, envisioning a stronghold that would stand the test of time. But as time rolled on, things changed, and by the late 15th century, Duke Francis II, the grandson of John IV, decided he didn't want to live in the castle anymore. Some say he left in the 1470s because he was bored. Others say it was because of problems with other powerful people. Whatever the reason, the castle was left abandoned. Eventually it was buried and new buildings were built on top of it, concealing the castle as if it were never there to begin with. Many years later, in 2021, a group of scientists came to the Lagos Hotel to turn it into a museum. When they started digging, they were shocked to find the hidden castle. They found old staircases, shiny jewelry, and even a moat. The walls of the castle were strong and really thick in some parts, up to 18 feet. It was 138 feet in length and 56 feet in width. At one point, it had flushing toilets connected to drainage pipes. And based on where the pipes were found, researchers believe that this castle had at least 4 floors. And get this, the place was run by hydroelectric power. Beneath the building, a canal carried in water from the nearby Mal River. Researchers believe that the force of the river's current drove a wheel, known as a residential mill, which harnessed the energy of the water. This energy would have powered a simple process like grinding flour. But if that were the case, wouldn't there be a wheel? Did archaeologists find one? Unfortunately, no. It was likely built out of wood, which wouldn't have survived all those years. But they did find the place where it once spun. To them, that was all the proof they needed. They also discovered a sort of grated exit window where water likely flowed out from the canal and into the exterior moat bordering the castle. Within the moat, more artifacts were found, like keys and padlocks, metal dishes, shoe buckles, and clothing. The remains of a wooden bridge were also discovered, which would have been essential for anyone trying to pass over the moat. Finding a castle buried beneath a hotel really makes you think, what's beneath the building I'm in right now? The Monstrous Pigs of Hampstead. You won't believe this London legend of mutated hogs running wild through the sewers. This is the tale of the Monstrous Pigs of Hampstead. But is there any truth to the story? According to the legend that dates back to the 19th century, a pregnant sow somehow fell into the sewer. The pig then became lost and disoriented while wandering through the maze-like world it landed in. Left with no other choice, the sow ate what it could find. Rubbish, rotten meat, whatever it could sink its teeth into. After some time, the pig gave birth to her litter down there. The story then goes that her piglets grew up and continued to multiply in the sewer, becoming more ferocious with each generation. This environment, coupled with the inbreeding, resulted in a race of monstrously large black-furred hogs. These pigs allegedly terrorized the toshers of London, men who rummaged through the sewers looking for jewelry, coins, and other valuables. Accounts from the 19th century claim that the hogs sprinted out of the darkness and would attack anyone who got too close. People had to keep an eye out for the pigs if they were anywhere near Hampstead, a residential area of London. The creatures seemed to gather in the sewers beneath the area. Some men even arm themselves with firearms just in case they encounter one of the crazy hogs. The legend eventually found its way into the Daily Telegraph newspaper. The story was even commented on by Charles Dickens himself. But where did this legend come from? Every story is based on a little truth, right? Most of the time, yeah. And this one is no different. In 1736, a story was recorded of a boar that somehow escaped from a butcher's knife and fled into the sewers around Smithfield. Smithfield was once a famous meat market in the old city of London. This lucky hog apparently spent the next 5 months roaming around the sewer system, feasting on trash. But this tale has a happy ending. The article says that eventually the pig emerged from a ditch. It wasn't mutated, it wasn't even pregnant. It just got lost and wandered around until it found its way out. The first account of the subterranean pigs of Hampstead, however, comes from a book written by Henry Mayhew called London Labour and the London Poor. Mayhew spent most of the 1840s observing the lives of the city's more poverty-stricken residents. He studied how these people earned money, as well as their relationships, religious beliefs, and sources of entertainment. He then combined his observations with official statistics. The men Mayhew found particularly interesting were the toshers, and it was from these toshers where the story of the monstrous Hampstead pigs emerged. Mayhew described the legend in his book, although he argued against it being based in any truth. If men could find their way into the sewers through open pipes, surely pigs could do the same in order to get out. That's what Mayhew thought anyway. The story appeared in the Daily Telegraph on October 10, 1859. It went viral thanks to Charles Dickens, who proposed that one day the pigs might rise up and run wild through the streets of London. Could you imagine? Sure, it's possible that a domestic animal could have fallen into the sewers in the past and multiplied down there, but is it likely? Not really. All in all, this is just a really fun legend that I wanted to share with you. And now you can tell all your friends about the mutated pigs of Hampstead, the mole people of Las Vegas. You won't believe what you'll find in the tunnels beneath Las Vegas. Entire groups of people are living underground in these dark passageways. Many of these people were homeless to begin with, but by living underground, they at least have shelter from the elements. They're called mole people or tunnel dwellers, and they have it pretty rough. Below the 5-star hotels, the Rio and Caesar's Palace, there's a dark parallel world divided by railroad tracks. This is a place where addicts, drug dealers, and homeless people gather. The network of tunnels covers hundreds of miles, and many places within these tunnels are inhabited. An estimated 1,500 people live in this world beneath the casino metropolis, the lights of which stay on 24/7. So how do you enter this place? Near the Rio Hotel, there are 5 entrances to the tunnels, and as if they led to an exclusive club or party, each one is managed and guarded by a different person. Nobody enters the tunnels without consent from one of these guards. Thanks to the fires residents use to cook, the walls are stained black and are covered in soot. It's not very appealing, but some people don't have a choice other than to live here. One of these tunnel guardians, who calls himself Captain, gave a tour of the tunnels to some reporters in 2023. David Signer published an article afterwards in which he spilled all the secrets of the Las Vegas underworld, painting a grim picture of what things are like for these mole people. For example, Captain has been living in the tunnels since 2015, when he got out of prison. When interviewed, Captain said that the underground passages lead up to the legendary Caesar's Palace, offering a beautiful view of the building. However, the floor of the chamber is filled with sewage water that funnels out from the hotel. He explained that some of the most important supplies you can have in this place are good socks and shoes. He once got a pretty severe infection on his feet and hands after walking through this sewage. As he was speaking to Signer, he showed off the white mold still growing on his fingertips after accidentally touching the contaminated water. Because of the amount of criminals who have taken up residence in the tunnels, police raids are common. It's the duty of the entrance guards to warn everyone of their arrival by blowing a special whistle. It's like these mole people belong to their very own tribe. So next time you visit Las Vegas and you're gambling up a storm, remember that below your feet there's an entire society living in the shadows. You never know how good you really have it until you end up in a place like this. The Lord of Sipan. Very few discoveries in the Americas rival the sheer magnitude of the unearthing of the Lord of Sipan's tomb in 1987. It might rival the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb, but that's in Egypt. Anyways, this discovery was super important because it revealed secrets of one of the biggest and most respected leaders from before the Incas. The Lord of Sipan was revered as a demigod. A team led by archaeologist Walter Alva was responsible for the monumental find. Alva was tipped off to the location of the tomb when he received a series of clues from an anonymous source. The person claimed that there was a massive mausoleum in the Peruvian town of Sipan. Alva didn't want to miss out on the opportunity of a lifetime, so he and his team set out on a quest to find it. Little did they know, what they were about to find could rewrite history. In the Lambayeque region, they found a treasure trove of artifacts linked to the Moche culture of Peru. A human head made of gold with eyes covered in silver really stood out to researchers. I mean, I think it would stand out to anyone, right? The quality of the relics they uncovered led them to believe that whoever was buried here was extremely important, and boy, they were right. The team first found an offering stone where over 1,000 offerings like pottery, bowls, and cups were stashed. They also discovered copper crowns, seashells, and lots of bones from llamas and other animals. Then they found what they had all been waiting for, the royal sarcophagus. It was filled with about 500 objects, including lavish ornaments and clothing that covered the body of the deceased. Among them, a crown, shell, pectorals, a rattle, and protective gear for the chin, eyes, and nose were particularly noticeable, all coated in gold. Buried next to the important leader were the skeletons of 8 people. It's not exactly clear who they were, but they were likely servants, companions, and warriors of the ruler. The Lord of Sipan lived around the year 250 AD. Essentially, he was the head honcho of the Moche culture. His life, however, was short. He was only 40 years old when he died, but it's not clear what killed him. Disease? Combat? Nobody is sure. The Moche rose up in the 1st century and lasted until about the 7th century. This civilization was one of the most important to ever be established on the northern coast of Peru. The Moche are famous for their impressive craftsmanship. Their pottery showcases exquisite beauty and artistic expression that reflect the world view of the culture. Scriptures and ornaments depicted men and women, mythical creatures, deities, plants, animals, and scenes of battles and ceremonies. Many of these artifacts have been unearthed from their burial sites, like the tomb belonging to the Lord of Sipan. The discovery of the tomb was labeled as the most remarkable find in Peru over the last century. It opened up a window into the past, allowing researchers to learn more about this civilization. Using these new discoveries, archaeologists started to paint a clear picture of what life was like for the Moche culture hundreds of years ago. They also learned more about the life of the Lord of Sipan. Interestingly, researchers believe that the ruler was hailed as a deity or demigod. He was worshipped and would have received offerings from his people, like gold and other precious metals, all of which were likely buried alongside him. This guy had more wealth than any normal person could ever dream of possessing. Backyard dinosaurs. What would you do if you found a dinosaur in your backyard? It may sound rare, but this actually happens more than you think. In 2021, Matt Perkins and his husband moved from Washington to Las Vegas, Nevada. After moving into their new house, they decided that they wanted to put a pool in the backyard. One morning, just after the couple had woken up, the guy working on their pool said he had something amazing to show them. When they went outside, they were greeted by police officers, which they thought was routine when doing a construction project like this. But nope, the police were there because while digging, the worker had uncovered the entire skeleton of a large mammal. At the moment, it's not exactly clear what this thing is, or was. It could be a mammoth, or maybe a prehistoric horse. Nobody is sure. The creature was found 5 feet beneath the surface. Its bones dated to between 6,000 and 14,000 years ago during the Ice Age. This discovery shouldn't have been much of a surprise, given that the property wasn't far from Tule Springs Fossil Beds National Monument. Similar fossils have been found at the site in the past, like bones belonging to mammoths. In 2017, a similar discovery was found in a homeowner's backyard in Pombal, Portugal. Again, while construction work was being done, workers started noticing pieces of fossilized bones. And in 2022, the creature was identified as the largest sauropod dinosaur ever found on the continent. It was 39 feet tall and 82 feet long. It was almost perfectly preserved, which is rare for a dinosaur of this size. Sauropods have been extinct for a while. They roamed the Earth 160 to 100 million years ago, making this specimen absolutely ancient. And just a few years later, in October of 2023, a Texas woman uncovered the fossil remains of not one, but 2 dinosaur species while walking her property in Lamar County. One of the skeletons belonged to a dinosaur called a pliosaur. The other fossil was the skull of a mosasaur, a predatory marine reptile that went extinct approximately 66 million years ago. You might want to start digging in your backyard because you never know what you could find. The Vixer helmets. What if I told you that the way Vikings have been portrayed in shows and movies is totally wrong? When you think of Vikings, do you picture them in helmets with horns? Of course, right? Everyone knows they wore horned helmets. Prepare to have your mind blown because that was never the case. Not once has any piece of evidence been found to support this. And yet you see this depicted in countless series and films. So if Vikings never wore those helmets, explain this. This is what archaeologists call a Vixer helmet, dating back to about 900 BC. It was found buried in a bog near the town of Vixo in eastern Denmark. In 1942, as a worker was cutting peat for fuel, he saw something shiny sticking out of the waterlogged ground. He didn't identify it as a helmet right away because it was in pieces. As he found more and more, he set them aside and continued his work. But eventually, a foreman at the site noticed the bizarre fragments and stored them somewhere safe so they could be examined some other time. Later on, archaeologists at the National Museum of Denmark found that the fragments belonged to not just one helmet, but 2, and each one was decorated with bull-like curved horns. So who did these belong to, and what's with the horns? The Vixer helmets are decorated with symbols that are meant to resemble a bird of prey's eyes and beak. Researchers found birch tar on one of the horns, so they believe that at one point the helmets were covered in feathers. They also may have featured a mane of horsehair running down their center. Both the bird of prey and the bull's horns were likely symbols of the sun. This makes sense considering that similar symbols from the time have been found in various parts of Europe, like the Mediterranean island of Sardinia. Researchers don't think this is a coincidence. They believe there has to be some sort of connection. According to experts, there are no signs that the Vixer helmets were ever worn in battle. In Bronze Age Scandinavia, soldiers fought with only rudimentary helmets or simply no helmets at all. So what purpose did these head coverings serve? Researchers think that the helmets were likely worn as symbols of authority during a time in the region when everything was becoming more centralized and politicized. There's apparently lots of signs pointing to this being the case. For one, the dating of the helmet to 900 BC fits well with this idea of centralization and the importance of strong political leaders. Those leaders likely used religious beliefs and new ideas like the horns on the helmets to increase their power. If you found the remains of a dinosaur, would you keep it to yourself or would you inform the authorities? Let me know in the comments down below. And while you're at it, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.